So both the candy and the protein. that is my jam with books. I want, that good bit of protein in a sweet snack. Hi and welcome to my channel. My name is Sarah and I love to talk about books. And today I'm doing a tag. It is the self-aware reader tag, which I was tagged in ages ago by Emily over at Novelle Novels, and I will link her video in the description below, as well as the questions. The video was, the tag was originally created by Connie Ferda, and I will also link her original video in the description box. Both those ladies are incredible booktubers, and you should definitely go and check them out. And I was really excited to do this tag because I really enjoy tags that get you to examine your reading, and they're the tags I love to watch people answer as well. I really like to understand people's reading personalities, and the questions in this one are quite insightful. So thank you, Courtney, for putting this tag together. And thank you, Emily, for tagging me in it. I'm sorry it's taken me so long to get round to answering it. But let's see, where are we with the questions? So number one is, what most draws you into a novel or story and makes you want to keep reading? Plot, characters, writing style, atmosphere, or something else? And actually, I had to think quite hard about this one, because at first I was going to say, oh, it's probably a bit of everything. But actually, I think that it's atmosphere that really draws me into a story, which I was surprised about. But when I thought back on some of the books that I really, really enjoyed reading, it is that sense of atmosphere, because I don't need a plot to be high adrenaline or full of twists, as long as something happens. And with characters, I don't need to like a character, I don't need to necessarily relate to them, as long as they feel authentic. And I think I've quite a wide taste when it comes to writing styles as well. I like lyrical writing, but I equally like writing that's quite sparse. I read classics and I quite enjoy that kind of more formal style of writing, but I also really enjoy writers that write in more modern books, and particularly those ones that really capture dialect and things like that. So I don't think any of that needs to be set in stone, but for me, I really need that atmospheric quality that makes me feel immersed in a book. It really gives a sense of place, of time, and mood. That is what really compels me and draws me into a book. And I'm thinking of books like, well, particularly Gothic books are really good at that. So The 13th Tale and Rebecca, I've really enjoyed those. I also really like ones that pull you into the sense of nature as well. So one I read this year that's sticking out is the Snow Child by Eowyn Ivey. And yeah, I just really like that sense of being taken to that place and being surrounded in that atmosphere. And then question number two, what is a convention or trope that will immediately turn you off in your reading experience with a novel or story? And I think I'm quite lucky in that I don't tend to read the genres that can be typically tropey, like fantasy or romance or YA. And so there aren't a lot of tropes that come up frequently in the books that I read, but I guess one that I really don't like is, the strong, powerful female. And not from an unfeminist point of view. I love a strong woman, but when it's the only thing about that character's personality and it's the only thing about them that's moving the story forward, it just feels really inauthentic if there isn't any other aspect of that person, whether it be the reason why they've become so strong, or seeing them with moments of weakness, because not everyone is strong all the time. And so I think I really don't like that when it's well, I guess it's with any character actually, not just necessarily the strong woman, but that is kind of a trope. But I don't like one-dimensional characters. They don't feel real to me, and a character has to feel real for me to enjoy a book. Question number three is, what appeals to you when reading non-fiction and makes you want to keep going? And I think that structure is really important when it comes to non-fiction. And like a good structure, it doesn't need to necessarily fit a certain mold, but I really do like narrative non-fiction. So the story is being told, you're not just being bombarded with facts. and or just like a creative way of structuring the story or the information that you're providing. Um, the divorce memoir I read this year, Split by Suzanne Finnemore, that was told around the stages of grief. And I thought that was a really interesting way in structuring a memoir about a particular event in someone's life. And I know some people don't like them, but I'm not adverse to footnotes. I think footnotes are really useful in nonfiction because it avoids that breaking up of the flow of what is being said, but still manages to include the information and the facts that you really want it when you're reading nonfiction. And I think it is that balance of how many facts, how many statistics do you put into it to avoid it being dry. And that, I think, for me personally, that's why I'm so drawn to narrative nonfiction rather than feeling like I'm reading a textbook. And question number 4 is, what is a convention or trope in nonfiction that would turn you off in your reading experience? And for me, it is child abuse. And I don't mean by that I'm opposed to misery lit or people sharing their experiences of having had abuse, being abused in childhood. But what I'm thinking of is those memoirs which focus solely on recounting instances of abuse, almost event by event. And I think we have moved away from that in general, but especially when I started getting into reading adult books, there was a big thing for these abuse memoirs. I think they're quite exploitative for the person who is writing them, and as a reader, I don't really see what the point is, because often there isn't much of a story arc, and I just question what we're meant to get from that sort of book. I know people can be defined from their trauma and how they handle it, but often in these books there is no after. It's like abuse, 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 and then I got away. And that you don't hear how they healed from that trauma or how they dealt with it or anything like that. And I think I'm just quite uncomfortable with that kind of approach to memoir. Question number 5 is, would you say you read more for pleasure and enjoyment or more to learn and exercise your brain? And I'm going to be annoying and I'm going to say kind of both. But for me, it's pleasure. I read to relax. It's a hobby. It's a nice way to spend my free time. I definitely read for pleasure. That is the primary goal why I pick up books. The fact that what I tend to read does teach me something. In particular, I really enjoy reading about different cultures, conflicts, and how they impact on individuals. Colonialism, post-colonialism. I'm just always really interested in finding out how different people live, how different things have affected them and their country, but always pretty much on that individual level. But I find pleasure in that. So yeah, it's definitely a pleasure for me. Question number 6 is, which type of book are you likely to rate more highly and enjoy more overall? Brain candy, so that's for pleasure and enjoyment books, or brain protein, learning and exercise books. And I suppose I have to be somewhere in the middle with that. I don't enjoy books that make me feel like I'm studying, but I'm also not a massive fan of fluff. I know it has a place, and sometimes I will read a fluffy book, I'll enjoy it well enough, but it'll never be one of like my favorite books that I've ever read. So I guess I'm definitely a mixture of the two. I'm like a protein bar. Like a birthday cake flavored protein bar. So both the candy and the protein. that is my jam with books. I want, that good hit of protein in a sweet snack. Question number 6 is, do you have a sense early on whether or not the book you're reading will be a 5-star read or a book you will really like? Has a book ever surprised you in this regard? I think for me, it's definitely within the first few chapters. I will tend to know whether I will be giving a book a 5-star. Not always, but it's those books where you're reading it and you're kind of getting like a yes, this is so good feeling. Like whether it's so good because of the writing or so good because you want to know what's happening next. whatever it is, I always get this kind of feeling where I'm like, oh my God, I'm reading a really great book. And so that's definitely characteristic of the ones that I've not only just rated 5 stars, but I've also kind of taken a place in my heart that I fondly remember, that I would, recommend to people and things like that. Not always, because sometimes it will just be gradually, like afterwards I'll kind of mull it over and I'm like, I really like that. Is it good enough to be a 5 star? And this is why I'm kind of stepping away from the whole star rating thing, because the amount of times that I would quibble, and a 4 star would end up a 5 star, or maybe a 3 star would end up a 4 star, or 4 star end up a 3 star, because I could never quite put my finger on, like, it's really hard to put that numerical value on a feeling, because for me, I rate on feeling. I will take into consideration if a book is making an important statement or something like that. But for me, how good a book is how it makes me feel, both in terms of the actual story and writing and everything itself, but also, did I feel like that was a good way to spend my time? So yeah, it can be a bit of both. I obviously really get excited by the ones where I can tell within a few chapters that this is a great book. And so I haven't had any surprises. I guess when it comes down to hype that books get, I think there has been a few surprises, because particularly with some of the books I've read on NetGalley, I've read some really incredible books on NetGalley and then literally never heard anyone mention them ever again. I'm thinking like Scabby Queen. I've forgotten who that's by. No, it's gone. I'll put it up on the screen. Scabby Queen was great. I never hear anyone talk about that. Scenes of a Graphic Nature by Caroline O'Donoghue. I really enjoyed that. I've never heard anyone mention that. This year I read When the Music Stops by Joe Heap. Never heard anyone else mention that. And those books I really enjoyed them for different reasons. They're all quite different books. So yeah, that is a surprise for me, when it's a book that I've really rated and just never heard of it ever again. And then on the other side, I've had some surprises where a book is really hyped and I've read it and thought, I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about this. And then it turns out that in those cases, the hype was totally justified. Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine. I probably wouldn't have picked that book up if it hadn't been written, or well, set in Scotland. But I read it and I absolutely loved it, and it definitely deserved the hype that it got. And Sally Rooney's another one. I was not particularly interested in reading a book about teenagers falling in love, essentially. And my best bookish friend, whose taste I always trust, he really hated conversations with friends. So I wasn't going to pick any of her stuff up, but the hype kind of got me thinking, oh, maybe I'll give her a try, but I didn't expect very much. And then I loved Normal People. So yeah, I think that's the great thing about reading, is there's always surprises, whether they are good ones or bad ones. And then question number 8 is, considering books that you've rated 5 stars in the past, or if you don't rate them, then books you've really loved, do you think you would feel the same way about them now? Why or why not? So this was something that was kind of in my mind when I put together my project Everlasting Love, because this is a project where I've picked some books that I rated 5 stars in the past, but I haven't read them for years, and I'm rereading them this year to see if my feelings about them are the same. And a part of that is that I just haven't really reread books very often in the past. I'm not a big rereader, so there was that element of it, because I've heard so many people talk about how good it is to reread, and I thought, I'm going to give it a try myself. And then I picked these particular ones because I wanted to see if I still loved them as much as when I'd read them the first time. I think I've read 3 or 4 out of the books I've picked so far, and most of the time they have absolutely held up. They've been true to how I remember the books and the reading experience, and I've still rated them very highly. But I have to kind of caveat that with saying that I think I picked books that I knew I was going to still feel the same about, or I had a good sense that I was still going to feel the same way about them. So that's probably no surprise. But when I look on my Goodreads and I sort it by the rating I've given them, there are books that are in that 5-star list that I think, oh, I gave that 5 stars, really? Oh. And so this question's got me thinking that maybe I will well, repeat Project Everlasting Love next year, but purposely pick those ones that I'm thinking I wouldn't rate you 5 stars now. Because my reading tastes have changed, and I've been logging books on Goodreads well, even since before I joined it, because I went back and because I'd always kind of reviewed books and kept a record of them in like my journal and things like that. So I went back through and added all those other ones back in. So really, there's a reading record of my life from about 2005, 6 on Goodreads. And so, yeah, I think there's definitely ones there that I should pick that would give me the opportunity to talk about how my tastes have changed and really reflect how I've grown as a reader, both in the topics that I read about, but also the sorts of books that I enjoy. So yeah, I think that would be interesting. Actually, this question's sparked another reading project. I haven't even finished the one I'm doing, but I'm already thinking. So the last question is just to tag people. Now, this tag's been around for a while, and I know that Emily's tagged quite a few people, and I don't know who they've then gone on and tagged, so I'm just going to take a bit of a stab in the dark. And firstly, I will tag Kim over at Bookmarks and Breadsticks, because specifically there are non-fiction questions in this, and I know that Kim reads a lot of non-fiction around food, so this would be a great tag for you to have a go at, Kim. And as always, check out Kim's channel, particularly if you like food writing, and that's not necessarily recipe books, but about a whole range of different topics, from memoirs to looking at different parts of food industries and things. She picks some really interesting books, so definitely go and check out Kim. Then I will tag Diana over at Books Yada Yada, because she is fabulous, so funny. She's one of the funniest booktubers that I follow. She's just really cool, and I love her style. And I know you read a wide range of books, Diana, so yeah, I think that this tag would be really interesting to see what your reading personality and what your thinking is behind your reading. That would be really good. And then finally, Margaret Bernard, I'm going to tag you as well, because you've got such a really great thinky mind. I really enjoy how you discuss things and how you analyze them, and I would like you to turn that onto your reading life and reading choices as well. So the three of you guys, you're all tagged. Oh, and I didn't tell you why you should check out Margaret's channel. Margaret is just, well, hopefully I've sold her to you in telling you why I want her to complete the tag. But Margaret's lovely, really supportive, and she's also an author, so it's really interesting to read books on the brain, to listen to her talk about that side of her life as well. So yeah, definitely go and check out Margaret too. I will link all three people that I've tagged in the description box below, so go and check them out if you don't already subscribe to them. And now I'm sitting in a really funny angle because I've really hurt my back, but now my feet have gone to sleep from answering all those questions. So 2 seconds while I do a bit of a shuffle. I will edit that out because that was so ungraceful. My back really hurts. So I'm not going to stick around for long now that I've finished the questions. That was a really good tag, so thank you, Courtney, and thank you, Emily. And if I haven't tagged you, you know you're always free to do it. And if you do decide to answer these questions, please let me know so I can check out your video. I hope you're up to something fun this weekend. It's Eurovision. Well, I was going to say here in Scotland, but it's Eurovision all over Europe. So I am taking advantage of the relaxed COVID rules now and sharing it with some friends, which is going to be really fun. Do not mistake me, I'm not a Eurovision fan by any means, but it's become kind of a tradition in our friend group to just have a Eurovision night and just use it as an excuse to get quite drunk. So I'm really looking forward to that. And actually, I found myself watching the semi-finals, and some of those, yeah, like Eurovision has upped its game in the past few years. It's not as, you know, people are taking it more seriously, and I think it is really interesting to see what other countries are doing musically. And we're not in the EU anymore, so I've got to find some way to feel like I'm still European. And also, this is the last video where you will be subjected to my lockdown roots, because I am getting my hair did next week, and I'm going to do something quite drastic with it. I think it's time for a change, so look out for that next week. And until then, bye.